What's up, everybody? Welcome back to DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by one of my favorite guests, Fabian Ardaya, beat reporter for The Athletic. Fabian, we're here, day before the postseason. As someone on our show put it last night, the 162-game preseason is over, and now we get to the real stuff.
Yeah, what do you mean we don't have 5 days of break between the regular season and the start of the season, postseason? I'm so used to it, but yeah, the postseason's right around the corner here, and yeah, it's time to really get going.
We're about to find out if it really is an advantage to not have 5 days off before this last one. But I want to ask you 5 questions, and then we'll get a prediction at the end about this series, about some storylines. These are in no particular order, but I'm just going to start here, and it's with the starting rotation. It seemed like for a while it was trending towards Shohei Ohtani being the game one starter, Blake Snell, and then Yoshinobu Yamamoto. They announced that that's not going to be the case. It's going to be Snell and then Yamamoto, and then presumably Ohtani if necessary. I'm curious, is this related to like a belief that Ohtani the pitcher impacts Ohtani the hitter, or do they think Ohtani's the third best starting pitcher they have?
Yeah, I mean, it's not official yet, but yeah, if that's how it lines up, I would say it has more to do with wanting to preserve two-way Ohtani the best way possible. And like you mentioned, him as a hitter. He's obviously struggled the day after he starts. Basically, if it lines up this way, either he would pitch game 3, and obviously if the Dodgers advance, he would have the days off before game 1 of the NLDS. Or if the Dodgers win both of those first 2 games, then he'd be able to pitch game 1 of the NLDS. And this year, the National League has a day off between games 1 and 2. So he basically would have the day off that way as well. And also, I mean, you signed Blake Snell and Yoshinobu Yamamoto for a reason. I think you're feeling really good no matter what with whatever the grouping of those 3 guys is. And that's the way that at least allows Ohtani the most chance to rest, probably the best chance to kind of optimize your best player.
Along those lines, can you ever remember a team that has come into the postseason with the type of starting pitching talent that the Dodgers have? I mean, all 3 of these guys, Yamamoto, Snell, and Ohtani, you could make a pretty compelling case as one of the like 3 or 4 best pitchers in the National League, and all 3 of them are on one team.
Yeah, and then even a guy like Sheehan has been one of the best pitchers in baseball in the second half, and a guy like Glasnow, where obviously he was acquired to be the guy in October, and he's a guy who isn't going to be in the bullpen, at least for the wild card series, most likely. So, yeah, I mean, this is a team that has a lot of starting pitching depth. It's sort of one of those things where you assemble this much high-end starting pitching in hopes that you have 2 or 3 of them that are standing and ready to go for October, and the Dodgers have, for all the things that have gone wrong for them this season or that they've sort of done to themselves, this is the one thing that's kind of worked out for them is the fact that they have all these guys healthy and all for the most part pitching well going into October.
Yeah. Staying on the pitching, question number 2 is about the Reds pitching. Much has been made about how good they are, and deservedly so. It's obviously the strongest part of what the Reds have done. I love how you guys on The Athletic broke it down where it was like, look, the Reds pitching is very good, but it's not the Dodgers pitching, okay? But the Reds pitching is very good. My question for you is, I'm feeling somewhat confident because the Dodgers have actually seen Lodolo, they've seen Green, and they kind of got to both of those guys. I know Lodolo had 1 million strikeouts, but he allowed 6 earned runs in 10 innings against the Dodgers this year. Hunter Green, 5 runs, 3 of them earned in 5 innings. Like, do you factor that type of thing in? Does that matter that the Dodgers have seen these guys and had success this season?
I think it matters a little bit because there's some familiarity. I don't think it matters too much. I think something that guys kind of was talked about, especially even the last few years where they've faced the Padres, the Diamondbacks, teams that these are guys you've seen a lot. They will shift completely what they're doing in October from what they've done in the regular season. It's always kind of a chess match, especially with these guys that you've seen more than once. So I think that there's a chance that it's helpful, but there's also a chance that they go completely off script or try to change things, or that the game planning becomes a lot more focused in a short series as opposed to over the course of the regular season. Guys are trying to feel right. Guys are trying to do their thing more than try to get the other guys' weaknesses out. So I do think that there's going to be a chance that that history is kind of meaningless. But I mean, obviously, especially when you are talking about 2 guys that talented, and also I would throw Andrew Abbott in there as well. Like those are guys who are going to be potentially a problem for the Dodgers, and they're going to have to sort of withstand that, sort of keep up.
As good as the Reds pitching is, do you think the Dodgers bats against that starting pitching? Like in that matchup, who would you give the advantage to?
I mean, I would say that the Dodgers are probably in a good spot, mostly for one reason that kind of stood out to me is they don't really have guys that can get Ohtani and Freeman out.
Yeah.
Outside of obviously Abbott and Lodolo are lefty starters. Like that's going to be probably the bulk of like whatever you'd see. But they don't really have a lefty in their pen that can get guys out. The only lefty they currently have in their pen is Britt Suter, who is more of a neutral guy and might not even be a lock to be on the postseason roster. So who is going to be the specific guy that they want to have on Ohtani and Freeman? I don't know who that guy is, as opposed to like the Dodgers, where the Reds really struggle against left-handed pitching, and they're going to have Blake Snell start and possibly up to 5 lefty relievers on this wild card series roster. So that's one thing at least the Dodgers kind of can set up and sort of have options that the Reds in their bullpen at least it doesn't seem like they have an obvious answer to.
Yeah, we noted that from the Dodgers offensive perspective, lefties have hit better against the Reds this season than righties have. And to your point, most teams, like when it comes to a team that struggles against lefties, you've maybe got one or two guys out there and you kind of have to pick your spots about like, well, when are we going to use Vesia here? Because the Dodgers this year, it's like every single time Ellie De La Cruz comes up, like there's going to be a lefty on the mound where he has a 67 weighted runs created plus against lefties. It might be Tanner Scott. It might be Robleski. It might be Bonda, but he is going to see an unbelievable dose of lefties, which to me is the biggest advantage I think the Dodgers have.
Yeah, like on paper, that's the thing that stands out the most is the Reds really have not hit left-handed hit pitching at all. Even their righties really haven't hit left-handed pitching all that well, outside of Miguel Andujar, who they acquired at the deadline. So yeah, I think that's one thing where having as many lefties as the Dodgers do kind of works out to their advantage, and it possibly keeps one of their best bats in Gavin Lux on the bench in a lot of situations. And that's a guy who they acquired because they knew that they needed that caliber of a bat to sort of lengthen out their lineup. So that's at least one way to sort of at least they can pick and choose, and also they can make sure that it's a different lefty on Ellie De La Cruz a lot of different times. There could be one time through where it's a Jack Dreyer. There's one time through where it could be an Alex Vesia. There's one time through where it could be a Tanner Scott, and you sort of just want to keep flipping Ellie De La Cruz over to that right side.
Yeah, I just am imagining Dodgers fans who are just locked in on this team, hearing you talk about Gavin Lux's bat as a weapon and somebody that the Reds, like I'm just somebody who just only saw Gavin Lux a year ago and doesn't realize that he's been a good hitter for them this year
He
and is
was
an
last year
important part of
too.
that lineup. Yeah,
He
totally.
was last year
Totally.
too. He'd be a very valuable piece on this version of the Dodgers right now.
Look, I held all my Gavin Lux stock all through the 2024 season, took a small victory lap as the second half wrapped up because he finally figured things out. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about the Dodgers. Will Smith, Dave Roberts had the ultimate Dave Roberts quote. I believe it was to Jack Harris, which was, we are hoping he is back, but we are not hopeful. Can you give us any insight into what the Dodgers expect or fear about Will Smith's availability?
Basically, it seems like for Will Smith or Max Muncy to be in the lineup tomorrow, they're gonna have to face live pitching today. So
Okay.
I feel like I'm more optimistic about Muncy obviously being available, and we'll see how it sort of looks with him. They've been very vague about like what exactly is bothering him, but they've also been very steadfast from the beginning that like he's probably going to be in there on Tuesday. Will Smith, I mean, he swung a bat for the first time a couple days ago, was hitting some foam balls. He hasn't even taken like full on BP yet. I just don't see him. I'd be very surprised if he's in the wild card series roster. Just because I mean this is sort of an issue that like it's not going to get better by playing through it.
Yeah.
Bones have to heal. I think they'd be better off feeling. Obviously, you want to make sure that you advance no matter what, but I don't know how effective he'd even be at this point playing with his broken hand the way it is. So I think they're better served just sort of waiting to see where things stand come around the DS. But it seems like one of those things where you're keeping the option open, but you're not expecting him to really be part of that.
Do you think there's any chance that they would carry three catchers and Will Smith would just be like, maybe there's one or two spots in this series where we bring him off the bench for one at bat and then immediately sub rushing in to play defense afterwards? Like, it feels like to me in a 3-game series, a 26-person roster, you don't need all 26 spots. So do you think there's any chance something like that happens?
I would still be surprised at that, just because like it's still something that's going to impact him swinging. It's not,
Yeah.
if it's one thing, but if they like he just can't throw with it, like that'd be one thing. But it's still going to impact him swinging. And like we said before, it's not like there's going to be a lefty looming in that bullpen that you really want to get him on. Obviously, like they've shown that they're willing to be aggressive with pinch hitting for a guy like a Rortvet or for a guy like rushing. If whoever's in there and sort of feeling like they're fine playing both those guys in the same game, that becomes easier, obviously, when you have Smith there. But Smith is not going to be healthy enough for that really to be an option.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Like they don't have to necessarily use everyone on that roster, but I think that they'd be better served using that either for an extra defensive replacement or a pinch runner or something like that for if it's late and close.
Okay. Is it a pretty safe bet in your mind that if Smith is not on the roster, that Rortvedt would be the everyday catcher?
Yeah, I would say so. At least getting most of the starts. Maybe I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe like one start, one off start. Maybe they for a spark they need some more juice in the lineup. They go with Dalton Rushing, but yeah, they've been pretty consistent from this moment that Will Smith got hurt, and especially after Rushing got hurt, and Rortvedt got that chance to really get some run. That Rortvedt is sort of the primary catcher at this point.
Okay. Question number 4. I want to play a game with you. I'm going to read a Dodgers reliever, and I want you to tell me, do you think you'll trust this player coming out of the bullpen in a playoff game? Okay. So
Okay.
I'll just read a name and you tell me, I think I will trust or I don't think I will trust this player. And I'm just going to go lefties first and then righties. Alex Vesia.
Yeah, trust. Easy.
Okay. Anthony Bonda.
I guess a lefty, trust.
Okay. Jack Dreyer.
Trust, but also recognize that he's thrown more innings than at a point in his career.
Yes. Tanner Scott.
Kind of have to trust. I think the best version of this bullpen is still if Tanner Scott has figured something out.
If Justin Robleski is on the roster, is Justin Robleski a guy you trust?
He's a guy I trust to throw strikes and not be afraid. So sure.
I love the way you're.
Well, there's caveats always with all these guys, but like he's a guy who at least like he's gonna throw strikes. And he's gonna have stretches where he looks great, stretches where he gets hit, but the stuff is good. And he's gonna throw strikes with it, and that's really all you can ask for in October.
You're absolutely right. Just a guy who comes in and throws strikes. Like at this point in the season, after watching what Kopech and Trinan and some of these guys have been through, I'll take it. All right, on the righty side, Blake Trinan.
Trust, while also understanding that like it's something that's going to have to keep growing. Like it's trust, but the trust is going to have to keep developing over the course of a postseason run.
Roki Sasaki.
That's one of those like the upsides obviously there. So I think trust just because you don't have a lot of right-handed relief options. So trust.
Do you think he's locked in on this postseason roster?
I think it's definitely more likely than not that he is, just because of how good he's looked.
Okay, Emmett Sheehan.
Trust, yes.
Edgardo Enriquez.
Probably trust.
Okay. Is there anybody I'm missing? I mean, I know like Ben Kasparius, Kyle Hurt, like Glasnow obviously is his own category, but like Kasparius and Hurt, do they have any chance to be in this group?
I say Kasparius a lot more than Hurt. Obviously, especially with Dave kind of already saying that he's going to be at least around here today for this workout. So he's someone that they said that they sent down to the minors to sort of get back to sort of attacking right-handed hitters, and he's done that down there. And he's a guy who obviously has some postseason experience, has started a World Series game, and didn't let the moment get too big for him. So he's someone I think they would definitely consider. I think that considering the matchup, with it being the Reds, that maybe you're going to lean more towards lefties just because of how much they struggled against them. But there still might be a spot where it makes sense to have a tough righty against like a Spencer Steer, Stevenson type, where you're going to want a right-on-right matchup.
So based on this list, if I told you, hey, blind, you don't get to know who the players coming up are, but the Dodgers have a 1-run lead in the 9th inning of Game 3 of the Wild Card Series, and I give you the two guys that you were definitively trusting, which were Emmett Sheehan and Alex Vesia, who do you want coming into that game?
Do I get to know who's coming up in the order?
Just it's two lefties and two righties mixed up.
I would go Vesia, just because like he's got experience late in games. Like Emmett Sheehan obviously has been one of the best pitchers in baseball in the second half of the season, but he also has not really been a short leverage reliever before. And obviously that's something they're going to try to do with him, but I don't know if that's something you necessarily would want to introduce that early on in postseason run.
Sheehan back-to-backs? Do we think that's off the table?
I don't think anything's off the table in October, but it's definitely something I'm sure that they're going to be extra cautious of, especially considering he's coming off surgery.
Okay, last question and then a prediction. What's the plan with Clayton Kershaw? I was surprised that it seems like they're keeping him as a starter for the NLDS. Maybe like, how do you see this playing out?
I think they're keeping their options open, sort of understanding that like there might be a scenario where they have to deploy where this series goes 3 games and they wind up having to deploy Tyler Glasnow in relief in one of those games. And all of a sudden you're looking at, all right, Tyler Glasnow and Emmett Sheehan in relief in those games. Like then you're looking at, all right, who's going to start game 1 for us? Kershaw's at least a good like contingency backup plan, especially you kind of have to keep that flexibility open, knowing that Yamamoto and Ohtani are going to need extra rest even throughout the postseason run. So that's one way to look at it. Also, like if not, like he's a guy who has sort of showed he could do long relief, he could do short relief, sort of just keeping those options open. And I think they already have a lot of lefties that sort of fit to sort of qualify for that wild card series. And I just think that's kind of the way it played out. And also, being able to go with a full start with him yesterday allowed them basically to not use any of their relievers because Landon Knack finished out the game. So that at least allowed 2 days of rest for all their bullpen arms going into Tuesday.
If the Dodgers make it through the wild card round and Glasnow does not get used as a reliever, do you think there's a chance Kershaw is off the NLDS roster as well?
I think it's something that's going to depend a lot on like how they kind of want to go about attacking the Phillies lefties, who they feel is going to be best on guys like Bryce Harper, on Bryson Stott, those kind of guys. I could see a scenario where he's left off, but I think more likely than not that they'll find a way to get him on for the DS, just at the very least, because he's a guy who, if there's a downside game in a 5-game set, he's a guy who could probably take a lot of bulk innings, but also can be shortened up for a shorter outing.
Okay. Before we get to a prediction, real quick on the roster, are you expecting any surprises to be in this group?
I think there's always surprises. Like I think I was really close to nailing the World Series roster last year, even knowing that Evan Phillips was dealing with something and he was left off. So surprisingly, I was still surprised. So there's always something with guys, but I think that we have a decent idea of what it's going to kind of look like going into Tuesday.
Okay. All right. Last question. We'll get you out of here. Theory's prediction for this one: 3 games against the Reds, potentially all at Dodger Stadium. Dodgers 5-1 against the Reds this season. Starting pitching advantage, offensive advantage, bullpen probably a slight disadvantage to a decent disadvantage. What's your prediction?
I still think Dodgers in 2. Honestly, I think that they can make up for a lot of the bullpen disadvantage, and I don't even know how much of a bullpen disadvantage is with the Reds, just because the Reds have a lot of guys with really good stuff, but also guys who have not pitched in those kind of games before, and they're not necessarily the most lockdown unit as it is. So I feel like all the different elements are either a push or Dodgers advantage, and also just when it comes to these starters, like this is what you got Blake Snell and Yoshinobu Yamamoto before, and we saw last year what it looks like with Yamamoto, but with Snell, like I think he has a chance to do some really special stuff this October, just because of how effective his stuff is and how good he's looked since he's come back.
I'm glad you said that about the bullpens. I've tried to play nice and give the Reds the advantage in the bullpen, but when I look at the group and I look at the numbers, I'm like, as much as people dislike the Dodgers bullpen, this Reds group, which they added some guys at the deadline, but it's a really average group. And there's, Pagan's night, there's just not a ton of names that
scare. The guy that stands out to most in that group is Chase Burns, just because he's the guy who's obviously super electric, and he being shortened up. We'll see what it kind of looks like, but I'm sure they're going to be somewhat careful with him just because he's a big part of their future. But he's the guy that scares me back there, and they have a couple guys with just really electric stuff, which will be interesting. There's going to be variance for sure, but there's also downside with certain guys who just haven't been in that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. That is Fabian Ardaya of The Athletic. If you are not already reading his stuff, go ahead, do yourself a favor and do it. It is worth the price of subscription. They got a ton of preview information on this series. Fabian had an article up on Ohtani and the season that he's had, as well as previewing some of this stuff. I imagine you've got some good stuff coming in the next couple of days as this one gets closer.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of stuff. It's postseason time. Normally, this is stuff that gets spread out over the course of a bye, and instead we have to kind of condense it and sort of, it's going to be a sprint from here on out. So
love it. Love it. Well, we appreciate the time, Fabian. Thank you to everybody who tuned in to watch. Again, this is Dodger Heads. You can go ahead, subscribe, and ring the notification bell here, Dodger Blue 1958 on YouTube, or check out the podcast, Apple, Spotify, and Google. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. As always, go Dodgers.